Everybody tells people, these young people, follow your passion, follow your passion. And I'm here to tell you that's bad advice. In my generation, if I'd looked at your resume and you could change jobs every 3 years, I'd say, ooh, maybe there's something wrong with you. But now, if I look at your resume and you've changed jobs every 3 years, I think, wow, you're a real learner. You're really ambitious. Because, thinking you could just find one job and stay there forever, it's not going to happen.
你好，Hello everyone, I'm Celine. Welcome back to my channel. You are a fresh graduate from college, or you are like several years into your career and you are kind of stuck. You are thinking about the next step. This video, I think, is very inspiring and will provide you a lot of insights and to rediscover your dysfunctional beliefs. You can see I have a book here. It's called Designing Your Life. I have the pleasure of meeting one of the author, Bill, and I invited him to my channel to talk about his new book, Designing Your Work Life. Bill, he taught at Stanford at the D School. He was also well known for his earlier product design at Apple. From product design to life design, you can see like there are a lot of similarities. So let's get it started. So we will just dive into the interview, and thank you so much, Bill, for joining me in this interview, and very excited to see you during this whole pandemic thing.
It'll be fun. It's a very strange time in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, so let's talk about your recent book, Design Your Work Life. I'm very curious, why do you think people don't like their jobs, and what's your intention in the beginning to write this book?
After we wrote the first book, Designing Your Life, our editor at Knopf asked us to do another book because the first book was pretty successful. And so we thought about the different needs in the world, and one of them was the world of work. If you look at some, like the Gallup survey, international survey, on average 82 or 85% of the people responding to the survey say they're disengaged at work, or even actively disengaged, like they really don't enjoy their work. And so that seemed like a really big need. And we're designers and we use design to design. So first we went out and we did our need finding, and it was like, wow, people are really unhappy. And that was surprising to me and Dave, because Dave and I have always enjoyed our jobs. We've been very engaged in the work we do, but we've been very lucky to find creative and interesting work all the time. So we dug into that a little deeper and started looking at more than just the statistics, but talking to people. And it turns out, yeah, a lot of people are particularly right when you get, like you come out of college and you're very enthusiastic and maybe you're very idealistic and get a job, and it's okay, but it's not great. And you get another job and it's okay, but it's not great. And you hit sort of your mid-career, your 30s, your early 30s or early 40s, and you're realizing this just isn't making me feel like I'm making a big impact. Or it's not making me feel like I'm not making enough money, or I'm just not making. It's just not enough. There's something wrong. And so we started to get into that problem, and it just turns out that there's lots of ways to design work, and people, I think the other big trend is we've gone from, in my father's generation, probably your father's generation, you got a job and you stayed at one company maybe your whole life, and the company agreed to take care of you and give you, promotions and more money every year, and you worked hard for the company. But nowadays, that's not really what's happening. I mean, companies are, changing and downsizing and growing, and they don't have any particular loyalty to their employees. And employees are realizing that if they want to advance their career, they want to learn new things, they just want to be more engaged, it's kind of up to them to design their own career. But when we talked to people, they didn't really know how to do that. They didn't understand, they wanted to change, but they didn't know how to make it. They knew they had to be responsible for their own development, but they really weren't sure what they wanted to learn next. And so we thought, well, this is a great place for a new book on using design to really jump into the world of work and figure out how to design jobs that are more meaningful, that have more impact, or that are just better balanced in your life.
I think definitely like work, finding a meaningful work or purposeful work is one of the big kind of a human need. Because I have been also working with a lot of millennials, and especially people fresh graduate out of college finding their first job. There's so many anxieties and expectations, things around that. And also there are increasing number of people are switching jobs, like they are they are changing their career direction even after 2 to 3 years into this workspace. So I'm curious, through your kind of research and your learning about the users, what are the obstacles, the major obstacles you find to prevent them from getting the job, getting or designing the job they want?
Yeah, it's what we call what psychologists call, and we use the term dysfunctional beliefs. Like, what do people believe that's holding them back? Well, you mentioned one thing. Certainly, the millennials and the Gen Zs are moving around more often, and they're changing jobs more often. Oftentimes, they'll work on a project or two at one company, and then decide, oh, I really want to learn something new, and they'll move to a different company. And that's no longer unusual. That's not, in my generation, if I'd looked at your resume and you could change jobs every 3 years, I'd say, ooh, maybe there's something wrong with you. But now, if I look at your resume and you've changed jobs every 3 years, I think, wow, you're a real learner. You're really ambitious. So that's changed, and that's a positive change. But some of the other dysfunctional beliefs are, look, the Gen Zs and millennials, this may be the first generation to live to be a healthy 100. Okay, so that's a big reframe. It used to be, you worked until you were 65, you retired, and then maybe you died 10 years later. And now, if you're just graduating from school, the good news is you're going to be working for 60 or 70 years. Maybe that's good news, maybe that's not good news, I don't know, but it's probably going to be true, which means the data says you're going to have 20 or 30 different jobs. And you're probably going to have, as you said, more than one career, literally completely different careers. I was an engineer, and then I went into hospitality and opened a bed and breakfast. And then for my encore career, I ran a nonprofit, doing education. So the really good news in that is, look, don't worry about your first job so much. Don't worry about what you majored in college. 10 years out of school, you're going to be doing something that probably has nothing to do with what you majored in college. And the other exciting thing is 10 years from now, whole new fields of study, whole new jobs are going to be emerging. And don't you hope that like 10, 15 years from now, you're working in a job or in an area like AI or machine learning or robotics or automation or digital transformation? All these new things are happening, and they're going to create brand new jobs that don't even exist today. So I think the good news is you don't have to worry about, get the first job. The first job is really just learning about how to go to work, get up every morning, get the job done. And the second job is just an extrapolation of that. But as you're going forward and you're finding new opportunities, you're thinking about putting yourself designing yourself in a situation so that you can be ready for these brand new opportunities, brand new companies, brand new fields of study. So, kind of future-proof yourself by doing little design prototypes of options that you might be interested in. That's one. The other one is, everybody tells these young people, follow your passion, follow your passion. And I'm here to tell you that's bad advice for two reasons. One is, we do evidence-based work at Stanford. We do research-based work. So we went over to our colleague, Bill Damon, who runs the Center for the Study of Adolescence at Stanford. And he studied the question of path and purpose and meaning. In his research, less than 20% of Gen Zs, millennials, have any singular identifiable passion. So 8 out of 10 people, when you ask the question, what's your passion? They say, I don't know. I have lots of things I'm interested in, but I don't know if they're my passion. And it doesn't matter, because the other research says that passion's actually, it's not the starting point. It's what emerges after you've been working in a field for a while. And it's a really good fit. So don't worry about if you don't have a passion. All you need is, that's a bad starting point. The better starting point is curiosity. The whole design your life, design your work life, it all starts with curiosity. What are you curious about? What kinds of jobs or fields are you just want to know more about? How do you do little prototypes to find out more? Well, those are called information conversations or prototype interviews. And if you learn to think like a designer, you're kind of ending up being much more resilient and much more future proof because you don't just have one plan to go forward. You've always got three. We call periodicity plans. So you have more in the world where you're expected to do your own career development, which is fine. You have a lot more autonomy than you think. There's lots of things you have control over. It doesn't have to do with what your boss wants or what the company wants, because you've got a lot more mobility than you used to have in the past. So it's all actually pretty good news. But you do have to put the work in to learn to think like a designer, so that you can be always designing another future that's even more interesting than the one you currently do.
Wow, I think it's, as you're talking about it, I'm very excited, but also scared a little bit.
Well, that's a little scary. The future is unknown, and the unknown is always scary.
Yeah, because there are a lot of uncertainty, which is something I think our kind of past generations are telling us. Certainty is good. Let's settle down for one thing. I think I was kind of brought up by that kind of family. So for me, I always dreamed to be a lawyer, which is, high paid and kind of secure jobs. Right. But somehow I think it also leads to my other question about, why do you think this is happening? Like, why the kind of a design thinking and learning to be a designer, to design our own life is so important nowadays? What are the kind of external circumstances that is happening?
People are changing jobs more often. Companies are less stable. The economy is moving very quickly, particularly the economy in China is rapidly digitizing and changing, and whole new areas of employment are disappearing or are appearing, and then the old ways of working are disappearing. You mentioned, lots of times families say, "Oh, I want you to be a lawyer or a doctor because that will be secure and it's very prestigious." The law profession is changing dramatically. Digitization, AI will wipe out 50% of the positions in law. So it's not safe either. And just anecdotally, when I run my mid-career workshops, and I get 100 people to come to a workshop, and I say, raise your hand if you're unhappy. Half the hands go up. Half of those people are lawyers who became lawyers because they thought it would be safe and it was a good profession, or because their parents told them they should be a lawyer or a doctor, and they didn't. One guy said, "Well, my parents said I had to be a lawyer or a doctor, and I faint whenever I see blood, so I couldn't be a doctor, so I had to be a lawyer." But a lot of people go into the law thinking they're going to fight for truth and justice, and they're going to fight for the little guy. But mostly, what you do in the law profession is write contracts for very large companies, to protect their interests. So whenever there's a mismatch between your own internal compass and what the actual job is, there's always a lot of unhappiness. And so I meet a lot of unhappy lawyers. But I think the outside forces that cause this change are the economies are growing rapidly, and they're growing in some places very fast, in other places they're shrinking. So in the US, the sort of knowledge professions of computer programming and engineering and design and marketing are growing rapidly, and manufacturing, other jobs are just disappearing. They're moving to different parts of the world. In China, you have a rapid digital economy emerging, and you have all these new opportunities, and some of the old jobs are just going to go away. And then you've got the AI, automation, robotics, machine learning trend. That's going to drive a lot of changes in a lot of industries very rapidly. And so, you only have two choices. I always tell my students, you only have two choices. The future's going to happen, whether you like it or not. The future's coming, right? And so you either accept what I call the default future, like whatever happens to you, you just try to respond and stay on top of it. Like this giant wave is coming, you try to stay, with your head above water. But that leaves you sort of, you're just responding to stuff. You have no plan. You have no agency. You can try a plan, but plans don't work because things are changing too fast. I mean, lots of people had lots of plans. Then the pandemic came, and boom, all those plans are gone, right? So if you want to have one single plan, it's going to be very brittle, very fragile. any change in the environment, and your plan will be gone, and then you'll be back to just responding to, whatever happens. I think the design approach is becoming more popular because people realize, oh, look, designers have been inventing stuff that never existed before for a long time. They invented the iPhone. Before this, it was a flip phone. The cool phone I'm a designer, so I had to have the cool phone. The cool phone was the Motorola Razr. It was a little aluminum phone that flipped open. It's really cool. And if you read the blogs before this came out, everybody said, oh, Apple's going to do a phone, and it's going to be like a little aluminum thing because that's really cool, but it'll be like the BlackBerry with a little keyboard. None of that happened. This happened. So how did design? When I was at Apple, we invented the modern laptop. The laptop I'm speaking to you on is the 99th generation of the thing we did, where you put the trackpad in the front, and the keyboard in the back, and the clamshell, and the screen opens up like a clamshell opening. Nobody had ever done that before. How did we do it? Well, we built hundreds and hundreds of prototypes. When you don't know what the future looks like, the only way to discover it is to just keep building and building and building and building things and trying little experiments to see what works. And we had hundreds of prototypes of the first laptop, and I know they had hundreds of prototypes of this. And according to Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs, they showed the phone to Steve 3 times, and 3 times he said, no, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. Go back and do it again. Go do it again. So we know this methodology of prototyping and experimenting, really focused on human needs, works to innovate in products. We see it everywhere. Lots of companies have adopted it. So why wouldn't it work to invent the future of you? And maybe even invent a future of you that's better than the one you were thinking. And because everything is changing so fast, if you don't have a rapid prototyping strategy, if you don't have a design strategy, you're just going to be stuck when the tidal wave hits you, right? So I think design thinking, as applied to innovation products, is well proven. We've proven that it works for innovation in your life. We have lots of research studies now showing that this improves your self-efficacy, your ability to design the life you like. It increases your creativity. And we have research studies on this, not just like, studies that, not just people telling us stories. We have lots of stories, but we have, I teach at Stanford, and Dave and I can't just make stuff up. That's not allowed. It's a research university. You can't just say, Bill and Dave think you should design your life, and this is the reason why. So we have studies that have looked at students before and after the class as compared to a control group of students that, in a kind of blind study control group versus students of the class. And we know that the people who adopt this mindset and learn these tools are much more resilient. They have more grit. They stick with solutions longer, and they experience their life as being more creative. Now, who doesn't want that?
Mm-hmm. Wow, I think this actually you are mentioning a lot concept and the things in the product kind of design field, and then we're using this kind of design thinking to apply to human life, which is redesigning your work and designing your life. This whole concept. I'm curious, what are the caveat or what are the similarities or differences you find when we use design thinking to apply to human life? Because I imagine it might be a lot more complex because there are emotions, a lot of things get involved.
Yeah, I mean, your life can't, there's a lot of bad self-help stuff self-help books out there. And I hate it that we're called a self-help book because I think of us as a design book. But anyway, it's got to go somewhere. A lot of the self-help books are like, hey, 3 steps to success. 1, 2, 3. And it's like, my life is way more complicated. 3 steps to success. I've got, family obligations. I've got houses and mortgages and all sorts of things to consider. Plus, the weird thing about people is, I've had many wonderful jobs. I was at Apple for 7 years, and I thought it was a fantastic job. But at a certain point, I said, I just want to try something new. I'm done. I'm tired of designing computers. And I changed. It wasn't the job was still great, but I changed. We change all the time. We grow into new opportunities. We grow into wanting new things. And so, yeah, it is more complicated. But see, that's why the design thinking thing works. Even when we do products. Let's say I had done lots of research and really talked to lots of people. I'd done my ethnographic studies. I really understood the needs of self-image. Let's just say I had a really good idea. And then I built this prototype. And then I got a group together of people I'd been, researching with, and I said, hey, look, I designed exactly what you want. Here it is. It's exactly what you want. It's everything you said. You know what would happen? At that point, when I showed people this possible vision of the future, just a rough prototype, possible vision of the future, they'd say, oh, is that what you were talking about? Well, if that's what you can do, you know what I really want? I don't want that. You know what I really want? Because, people don't really understand what's possible in the future. And they don't really know what they want. There's a famous quote from Henry Ford, the guy who invented modern automobile. He said, if I'd asked my users what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Because at the time, the fastest way to get around was a horse, right? So they didn't know that you could have a car. So what happens is when I show you a little prototype of the future, you actually, now when you realize that's possible, you come up with new needs. You say, oh, well, if you can do that, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? So the genius of the design thinking process is that's okay. In fact, we want to provoke you to think about the future in a new way. And then when you get to that possible future, you're going to go, wow, from here, look at all the new possibilities. Well, that's the magic of designing your life. I make a little prototype. I have a conversation. I have 3 conversations with people in an industry I'm interested in as a student. Just conversations. I'm not looking for a job. Just, hey, tell me your story. How did you become a international blogger? Tell me your story. And then from that knowledge, I'm now in a new place, and I see the world differently. And all of a sudden, new opportunities are now visible that I didn't even know about before. And if I do that enough times, I get in this habit of being a curious person and talking to people and prototyping little examples. And 2 things happen. One, all of a sudden, possibilities I didn't even know, from my career, from my life emerge. And 2, it's scary. The future is scary. You said it. It's like, it's uncertain. It's ambiguous. The real trick here is that by doing these little prototypes, these little experiments about the future, you lower your fear of the future, right? I mean, the future's scary and it's ambiguous and you don't know what's going to happen. And designers are really comfortable with designing into ambiguity. This, not exactly sure what we're doing or where we're going, but we'll try a bunch of experiments. We'll do little prototypes to see what happens. It's a way of lowering our fear of the future, and it's a way of getting started, right? Because sometimes people are afraid to make changes. I think most of the stuff that comes up in workshops in the class and we teach at Stanford is, it's just scary to think about the future, and you need a method that makes it possible. And we call it, our method is set the bar really low. Try simple things and build what David Kelly calls creative confidence. And the more confident you are in your experiments, your prototypes, the more you can handle the ambiguous future. And look, I mean, sometimes stuff happens. Like the pandemic happens. I've been working with a group in Thailand. Well, Thailand's economy is 90% tourism. And there have been no tourists, almost 0 tourists in Thailand. So, if you're in that situation, you didn't cause it. You didn't ask for it to happen. But you better have a response. You can't just do nothing. Right? So, trying to help them figure out how to design systems to back up the tourism industry, and also to figure out how tourism can occur. Because even the post-pandemic, when vaccines and everything, people are still going to be cautious about traveling. So one of our findings from that study is, people want luxury travel, and the new luxury is safety. If you can make me feel safe, then that's luxury. So that's really new. But that comes from really understanding where people are at. And people keep changing. We're all in a different situation than we were 9-10 months ago.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, as you're talking about this, I'm wondering, I'm also curious about the concept, again, back to the concept of like the designer thinking, and also versus a secure or a certainty, like this kind of human need. I think somehow, like we are, maybe this is more to the psychology aspect, is we need excitement in our life, but also there is a fundamental need to be secure and to be certain about things. I'm wondering how design thinking play a role to help people or to address this.
So it is a human need to have certainty. If you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the very first one is safety and security, literal safety, like, no one's shooting at me and I have enough food and I have enough water. But as you move up the hierarchy, it becomes more and more emotional needs, and then eventually the need for what he called self-actualization. So, of course, we need security, and we need a sense of belonging, to our community, to our culture, to the world around us. And I think, again, there's nothing in the design thinking idea for your life or the Design Your Life books. None of them say, oh, what you have to do is a radical change of everything. In fact, we really like the idea of setting the bar. So let's say you were in one of those jobs for a couple of years, and you start to think, I don't know if this is really that good. Our advice would be to change your job. Our advice would be, we have 4 strategies. We say, don't resign, redesign. Redesign the job you're in. And you have more agency to do that than you think. So 2 or 3 of our strategies, you don't even need to talk to your boss. You just redesign, reframe the way you're working. So I think certainty comes from a sense of confidence that you're in control of what's happening to you. Now, some of the world, no one's in control of the global pandemic. No one's in control of if your company suddenly has financial troubles and you become laid off or redundant. You have no control of that. But you can have a robust reply to that, a robust system for managing change, which would be more robust if it were design based and more, had more options. But I think, I actually think our method is all about coming to this place of creative confidence. Like, hey, no matter what the problem is, I'm a creative person. I can solve it. And then the notion of what the psychologist Albert Bandura calls self-efficacy. I'm comfortable and I'm secure. I feel safe because I know I'm a strong person. I know I have grit. And I know I can persevere in even a difficult situation. So I think that's the best you can do, because you can't control the world and you can't control, what the external circumstances are. People get sick, people die, friends move away, life changes. But if you feel confident that you're on the right path, and if you feel confident that the work you're doing now is building towards the kind of person. So we have an exercise where we have a life view, what's the meaning of life, and a work view. We put the 2 together and we call that the compass. And once you know, hey, I've kind of got a direction. The compass isn't telling me, oh, what I want to do is this next year. The compass just tells me I want to move north. Or I want to move northeast, right? So if I've got a strong compass and I feel like I'm on track to my future, and I'm have self-efficacy, I'm comfortable that I know how to do this, that I'm in charge of the things I can control. I think that's the best you can be, because thinking you can just find one job and stay there forever, it's not going to happen. That's a false sense of security. And when either you become disenchanted with the job or the company decides they don't need you anymore, you don't want to be unprepared for circumstances you can't control, and you don't want to be pretending that you have security when the security is really people in charge of your security are someone else, not yourself. I think you feel stronger when you believe you're in charge of your own security.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really love the way you brought up like the illusionary kind of security, because I think this pandemic a lot of people lose job because of this situation,
Mhm.
and suddenly their mobility got kind of constrained or kind of restricted. We cannot fly to anywhere we wanted before. A lot of plans are disrupted, and
Yeah.
this got a lot of people and also my clients rethink about what security really means, and this kind of designing your life kind of a concept or way of thinking really give them a better confidence and better sense of control as you are describing, especially during this pandemic season.
I think so, and it's very the pandemic has been difficult for a lot of different reasons, and certainly if you lost a loved one or a friend or a family member to the COVID-19 disease, that's a terrible, terrible thing. But it just reminds us that life is uncertain. I just did a program, the United Nations, the Nobel Prize Foundation, which gives out the Nobel Peace Prize. We just did a kind of a conversation with some students in Afghanistan. They're at Kabul University, and the university had just been attacked by religious, I think it was the Taliban, and 18 students were killed and 2 professors were killed, and a lot of the campus was blown up. But there was a great picture of a student standing in a classroom with the windows are shattered and there's garbage and stuff all over the floor and the walls are burned. And then there's another picture where he swept everything up and cleaned everything up and put a chair in the middle of the room. He says, "Can we go back to school now?" And so the Nobel Peace Prize, the Nobel Foundation that gives out the Peace Prize, wanted to do something to support those students. So I had 4 of my students. We had 4 students from New York University. And we had a dialogue with our students about what it's like to go to school in a war zone, right? And particularly the young women who are trying to get educated, to go to the university in a culture where some people would kill them for even trying to be educated. And I participated in that because I just thought it would be a wonderful thing to do to try to support these students, but also so that my students could reflect on everything is is in comparison to what? Okay, we can't have classrooms, we have to do it on Zoom. We can't travel, and I used to do a wonderful field trip to San Francisco, and I can't do that. And my students are living in their apartments, and they can't travel. But compared to the students at Kabul, where people are actually firing grenades into their classrooms and murdering them simply because they're a woman who wants to be educated, you gotta say we're still okay. Right? There's always someone in the world who's really suffering much more. And it was great to be able to support those students and encourage them. But I can't protect them. But what was so interesting is that their passion to learn and their resiliency to come back even after that situation. And their students, they have to work all day and then go to school all day because they have to, their families have money. And so, when you meet people in those kinds of situations, you meet them personally one-on-one, you realize, the human spirit is strong and can really, survive and thrive in almost any situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I stopped complaining about the fact that I have to be, sheltered in place in a beautiful home with all of my children, lots of food, and I can't travel, but so what?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Feel more also like gratitude towards life. Mm-hmm.
You can go to the Nobel Prize site and see a video of that student conversation. It's very sweet.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys wanting to learn more, I really recommend to buy his book on designing your life and designing your work life. There are a lot of theories and also practices, workbook you can actually do by yourself. I have been through this process myself and it has been very beneficial. Thanks you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.